Successful planning often comes down to focusing on the right things. Sometimes focusing on the right things means not focusing on the wrong things. In today's video, we're going to talk about 5 things that you really shouldn't be focusing on that I see far too many people spending all their time and energy actually focusing on. Hey everybody, I'm James Canole, founder of Root Financial Partners, and I'm here to teach you what you need to know to create a more secure retirement. So how do you know where to direct your focus with investing? Successful financial planning is hard because you are being hit with the news and the media, and you should do this and you shouldn't do that, and there's active and there's passive, and how much should you save and how much should you spend? Where do you even start with it all? Well, where you can start is let's narrow down the number of things that you should even be focusing on. In today's video, let's talk about 5 things that I see people spending all their time and focus on that really should not be focused on quite nearly as much. Number 1, and some of these things might be a little controversial, is the first thing not worth spending your time on too much is the active versus passive debate. There's so many people talking about should you be a passive fund manager or should you be a passive investment owner, should you be an active investment owner, simply coming down to as you're owning mutual funds or ETFs, the way you're managing your portfolio, what's the philosophy that you're going to subscribe to? Are you going to subscribe to the philosophy that a good manager can outperform the market, or a strategic stock selection or market timing can allow you to outperform the market? Or do you subscribe to the thought that simply own the market? You can't outperform it. Simply own the different stocks in the market and let them perform well for you. Well, as you're looking at this, I certainly have strong opinions. I have opinions about what I believe is most effective, and you've probably seen these in other videos, but there's only so much value that's going to get you. Let's say you get it exactly right. Whether you're using the best active managers, the best passive managers, let's say you get that perfectly right. Too many people spend so much time debating and focusing and doing that they miss out on what actually matters. And I'll look at them and say, well, regardless of the passive or active is better, you're not saving nearly enough to be on track for your goals. Or you're saving in the absolute wrong accounts, or you're doing this the wrong way, or you have a passive or an active manager, but you're only saving the wrong types of assets. So you can get that decision perfectly right, but if you lose sight of the greater picture, it really doesn't matter. Choosing active or choosing passive and doing so accurately is not by itself going to get you any closer to retirement. So retirement is more a function of how much are you saving? What types of accounts are you saving to? What are the other decisions you're making? And while this is an important decision, the amount of energy people spend thinking about this is probably far greater than they actually should, and they should be focused on other things instead. The second place where I see people spending far too much focus is fees. And now again, this is an area that really matters. I am all about reducing fees to the greatest extent possible and cutting out unnecessary fees. But there's so many people where fees are the only thing they can pay attention to. I've literally recommended funds to people and they've come back and said, well, what do you think about this one instead? It's 0.001% less expensive internally. Shouldn't we use this? And it's almost like, sure. And the amount of extra money that's going to make for you over time, the amount that's going to move the needle over time is practically zero. So are fees important? Absolutely. If you're paying unnecessary fees to mutual funds or to a financial advisor or to any provider that you don't feel there's services being offered to justify those fees, cut those fees out. I'm sure you've seen the charts of what do fees do over the course of a lifetime to the value of an account. It can decimate the account, or it can really significantly hold the account back if there's not services being provided to justify that. I've had people come to me and they're so focused on keeping their fees zero that they're missing out on all the tremendous work that needs to be done to improve their situation, to improve their asset allocation, to improve their withdrawal strategy, to improve what they're doing, that they will never actually do because they will not pay a fee to get it done. So are fees important? Absolutely. But unless you're understanding the value provided in context, you cannot really make a decision. So is there a one-size-fits-all fee approach that works for everyone? No. And make sure that you are paying a reasonable amount or as little in fees as possible, but don't let fees be the single focus of what you're doing, because if so, you're probably missing out on the bigger picture, which is the things that actually need to happen for you to be on track to retire. The third area that people spend far too much time focusing on is small impact decisions. How often do you see people say the key to a successful retirement is to cut out the coffees that you buy at Starbucks? Or the key to successful retirement is to not eat the avocado toast? Or the key to successful retirement is to make your own lunch when you go to work? All great things, all important things. But how much impact do those decisions actually have? Let's say you save a few bucks every month because you make your coffee at home, how much does that actually add to the bottom line of your retirement? Let's say every single day you don't go out to eat to lunch, you bring something instead. How much of an impact does that actually make? Now, in some cases, it certainly does make quite a bit of an impact. But compare that to what are the other things that you could be looking at. Look at the things that have the biggest impact, which for a lot of people is big purchases, like your home, big purchases, like a vehicle, big raises, like career trajectory and advancement and promotions. When you look at those, how many cups of coffee do you need to make at home to make up for buying a mortgage that you can't really afford, or buying a home that you can't really afford and having a mortgage payment that's too large? So the more you focus on these little decisions, we only have so much mental bandwidth. And if we spend so much of it on these things that are meaningful, but as a relative amount are much less so than the bigger decisions. Like, how can I increase my income 10%, 20%, 30%? How can we buy a home that's affordable, that allows us to keep saving for retirement and keep putting money away? How can I understand how much car I can afford so I don't buy so much car that it derails my ability to do other things? Those are the decisions we should be focused on. Not how should I get my coffee or where should I be making my lunch, unless you're in a position where doing so is inhibiting you from your ability to save for retirement and other goals. The fourth area that I see people spending far too much of their time focusing on is recent performance. Now, people say, oh, I know, I need to think long term. And I say, okay, well, what's long term? And they say, I don't know, probably like 12 months, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years of performance. The hard thing about investing is truly long term can be 20, 30, 40 years or more in many instances. For example, as of the time of this recording, over the past 5 years, it's been large US growth stocks, a lot of these tech companies, that have absolutely crushed everything else in the market. So when people are getting started with their investments, or when people are allocating their investments, where do they look? They say, well, what's worked well recently? And what they tend to be focused on in their portfolio, it looks like a reflection of what's done well recently. They say, oh, well, it's been 3 years, it's been 5 years. The long-term performance shows that this is what I should be invested in. Well, long-term performance, unfortunately, is not just 3 years or 5 years. You need to look much longer. An example of that is the S&P 500 the past 10 years has also performed very well. From 2010 to 2020, the S&P 500 averaged about 14% per year. That's a very strong return. Well, look at the time period before that. The decade before that, from 2000 to 2010, the S&P averaged a negative 1% rate of return for that decade. So if you just even look at 10 years, well, people who were allocating their portfolios at the beginning of 2010, if they look backwards, they would have said, oh my gosh, this S&P 500, this is a horrible example. It just returned negative 1% per year on average for an entire decade. I'm going to go chase performance where it's more recently happened, in the emerging markets, in international companies, maybe in small companies or bonds. Well, a lot of those are the companies that underperformed over the following 10 years. So let's not fall into that same trap now. Of what's performed well recently, as of this recording at least, well, it's those big US stocks. Let's not make the same mistake people did 10 years ago of abandoning the things that have underperformed, relatively speaking, over the last 10 years to focus just on what's performed well. A lot of times with investments, you have to look at 20, 30 plus years of data to understand where does long-term performance actually happen, so we're not focused so much just on what's happened recently. And then finally, the fifth place that people spend way too much time focusing on, the news. And this might not just be an investment thing, but the news is a place that people spend far too much time focusing on. I used to think when I first got into the business that my value as a financial advisor was to keep up with the current events. What's going on with macroeconomic policy? What's going on with trade relations? What's going on with the different things happening around the world? Because the key to a successful outcome is understanding what's going on and being on top of it. Well, then you start to realize that this world moves so fast and information is so readily available and things are happening so on such a grand scale that even if you feel like you're on top of every last thing, oh, I know about this merger that's happening, or here's my expectations for what growth is going to look like, or here's what's going to happen in this country at this time period, all that information is already known. And whatever you think you know about the market, chances are good it's already reflected into the stock prices or bond prices or investment prices of the investments you're allocating your money to. So as you're looking at news, what you start to realize is so much of it is for entertainment purposes only. The news has a vested interest in keeping your attention. How do they keep your attention? They tell you things that sound terrible and that sound frightening. Here's why the stock market's going to crash. Here's why you should own gold. Here's why you should go to cash. Here's why this is a terrible thing that's going to happen. And you look at it, and if you actually look at any history of news, most people would immediately stop paying attention to it if they saw how terribly inaccurate the news was as actually predicting what was going to happen. But we're drawn to it. We're addicted to it. There's almost this dopamine rush as we're looking at the news and what's happening so quickly. But what you start to realize is that doesn't actually matter. That doesn't move the needle, because as fast as you think you can stay on top of things, you're not going to be faster than the market as a whole. And those things that are happening are going to be allocated and reflected into the stock prices and bond prices and investment prices of the things that we're already owning. So we recognize that the news is just noise in most cases. And we don't want to make long-term investment decisions based upon noise. We want to make long-term investment decisions based upon our situation, what we know to hold true over long periods of time, and what we need to be able to do to get from where we are today to where we want to be in the future. But keeping up to date with the news has little to no value on our ability to do that. So that being said, where should we focus our attention? If it's not on the news, if it's not on recent performance, if it's not on fees or even active versus passive or other things like that, what should we be focusing on? Well, the most important things to focus on are things like how much are you saving? So let's assume you're invested in the best performing fund of all time and you're doing incredibly well. If you're not saving enough, no amount of performance is going to overcome your inability to save what you need to save to be on track for your goals. So start with that. Start with understanding what can you control. Well, the first thing that you can maybe control is your savings rate. How much are you saving? Are you saving enough to be on track for your goals, whether that's retirement or home purchase or sending kids to college or whatever it may be? And don't use your investments as almost like the scapegoat of saying, I'm so focused here and then reworking performance here, to give yourself permission not to save enough to be on track for your goals. So make sure that you're focused on your saving rate. Make sure you're focused on your personal goals. Your personal goals are really all that matter. Your retirement, your home that you want, your ability to take care of your family, those are personal and unique to you. Don't let the news, don't let the media, don't let recent performance get in the way of being laser focused on what you're actually saving and investing for. Make that your focus. Not external events, not things out of your control, but make moving in the direction of your goals your absolute number one focus, because that is within your control, whereas a lot of these things are external and fully out of your control. You can focus on matching your portfolio to your goals. Now, this doesn't mean focusing on short-term decisions. This doesn't mean you should be active or passive or anywhere in between. That's a decision for you to make, but you certainly want to make sure you're matching your portfolio to your goals. Make sure that you're owning the right types of investments. Make sure that your asset allocation is right. Make sure that you're doing the right things so that the investments you have are in alignment with the goals that you have, as opposed to focusing on that short-term performance, as opposed to focusing on, oh my gosh, I'm only in passive funds, so I'm doing it right. Well, you might be in passive funds and think that you're doing it right, but if you're owning the wrong types of investments, if you're all in bonds when you should be in stocks, or if you're not diversified within your stocks, or whatever the case may be, you may be passive but fully missing the picture, or you may be fully active but fully missing the picture. So do you have the right asset allocation in place to match your portfolio you have to the goals that you're investing for? And then finally, focus on high impact decisions. We only have so much mental bandwidth to go around. Make sure we're directing that on the things that matter. Not buying coffee in the morning isn't really a thing that matters a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. Make sure that you're focusing on those high impact decisions. How much home are you buying? How much car are you buying? What type of work and salary can you command for the skill set that you have? Those are the types of things that will really move the needle far more than some of these low impact decisions. And then can you automate that? Can you take the focus out of it? Can you almost not have to focus on finances by automating how much you're saving, automating your 401k contributions, automating your savings rate, making sure that things that need to happen for you to be on track for your goals are happening whether you're focusing on them or not? Because at the end of the day, your goals should not be focused on what's the stock market doing today, what's CNBC saying today, what's going on that's outside of our control today. Your pursuit of your goals should be fully focused on where are you today, where do you want to be in the future, and what can you do to make the highest impact decisions to get there as efficiently as possible. Thanks again for watching. This is James Canal with the Root Financial Partners. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to share it with someone else who you think could find value from it. And also be sure to like this video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want more resources about how you can create a secure retirement, be sure to check out our podcast called Ready for Retirement. And finally, if you're interested in seeing how our services can help you create a secure retirement, check us out at rootfinancialpartners.com.